Welcome back to Off the Pitch podcast, the podcast where we chat with individuals working within and shaping the game of soccer from off the pitch. In today's episode, we're joined by none other than Lisa Franklin. Lisa is currently the Chief Marketing Officer of MLS side D.C. United. I know that we really enjoyed this conversation with Lisa and learning about her background and her jump from the tech world to soccer, what it's like to run the marketing department for one of the league's most recognized clubs, and so much more. I'm confident that you're going to like this one as well. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on today and giving us some of your time. And we'll get into why it's specifically a busy week for you in a bit. But obviously we've done a bit of digging on your background and know a bit about who you are and kind of your career journey and things to date. But for everyone who's listening that doesn't know who you are, would you mind just giving a bit of a brief history of your career and, maybe who Lisa Franklin is?
Yeah. So I always like to say Lisa Franklin is a career marketer. Probably was marketing before I really knew that was even an option from a career perspective. But I've been in marketing for about 21 years. I started out in CPG with Duracell and then hospitality with Marriott. And then after I got my MBA, I made a huge transition over to tech. And so spent a number of years launching and products and experiences. I had the opportunity to work on Facebook in its infancy. So was on loan to them while I was at Microsoft for about a year, launching the platform to advertisers. So I'm actually aging myself just a tad bit. One thing you need to remember, I was just young. I was really young at that point. But and then, just really had an opportunity to understand the value that tech brought to a number of different individuals and to figure out ways to enhance a user's experience through all of that. And so had stints at Microsoft, at Deloitte, was also, like I said, with Facebook, Verizon. And then when I was at Deloitte, I also worked on Google. So I was working on Google marketing platform. And then recently, about 2 years ago, decided, or 3 years ago, I always wanted to go to a startup. And so I decided to make that pivot and thought I wasn't getting any younger. So now or never, in the middle of, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I'll let you guys figure that out and how challenging that was. And then about a year ago, I had the opportunity to enter into sports, and I had, at the same time, had randomly had two opportunities be presented to me. And it's always been an industry that I wanted to transition back into, but just was trying to figure out the best time and place, especially as someone who has had this longevity of a career in another industry, but also someone who is a mother and a number of other things. And we'll get into that as to why people believe that you can't be successful and have all of those things. And so I am now the Chief Marketing Officer at DC, MLS's D.C. United and Audi field. And so, when you think about kind of growth and trajectory and why I would choose to make that shift, we'll get into that a little bit later. But, with MLS having such a resurgence and growth, that was a huge predictor in my decision.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the opportunity itself come about to pivot into soccer from this tech and, Deloitte background? You said you briefly mentioned that it came up, but how exactly did that opportunity come out? Because it's not just an everyday position.
Yeah, well, so I'll say this. I'll preface this by saying when people hear tech and they hear like consulting, they think of, and no shade on one end or the other, but they think of something that is very rudimentary. There's not a lot of creativity that has to come in to those different roles. And so I actually worked on some really cool projects. And so, launched Xbox Live, worked on Skype, MSN video, like a number of those. And then I mentioned Facebook, Google Marketing Platform. So I had worked on a number of different products and opportunities that bridged sports and music and a number of other, industries within what we were doing. Ironically, though, at the time that this opportunity presented itself, like I said, it was always in the back of my mind. I'm actually also married to someone who's is an administrator in collegiate athletics too, so I'm around it consistently. But two different executive recruiters approached me at the same time for two different teams in the DC area, and I thought, okay, this is definitely a sign. And it really was about the right opportunity, right place, right opportunity. And I always talk about that you make different shifts in your career, and there's times where you have to take advantage of the opportunities, and that's really where it came to be.
Awesome. Yeah. So if there was another club, and we don't need to mention the club or anything like that, but what was it about DC United that made you go with them over the other club or any other opportunities that there might have been, sports or non-sports?
Yeah, I think as an individual, you have to be very self-aware. Like self-awareness is one of those things that I say is one of the most important skill or characteristic someone can have. And by in being that and being very self-aware, you also know where your skill sets lie, where your zone of genius, like where you really shine, where you're able to make an impact, and where are those areas where you need kind of a good community around you to be able to move forward. What I liked about DC United was the vision of where they wanted to be. This wasn't just like we're just sitting in where we are now, but the vision, they had a 5-year vision of where we wanted to grow. Um, so I moved to the Maryland, DC area when I was 5. So moving back to this area, I had a great knowledge of sports in this area. I knew the fandom. I liked the opportunity to be able to build up awareness of soccer within this community, because it is one of the first sports that children play, and somewhere along the way they lose that connection. And so the challenge of being able to shift and bring that back in a community that you were aware of was very compelling. And then the leadership. I mean, a lot of times people say, people join and leave organizations based on the leaders, and it's unfortunate because you want people to be able to shift, but there are a lot of times are the ones who sell you their vision and their ability to kind of get things done. And there was some great things happening here at DC United, and some things that on the horizon, and their willingness to say, we're actually looking for your skill set. So we want somebody who has digital experience. We want somebody who understands paid media. We want someone who understands how to unlock a brand's power through sports in very unique ways, right? And so those are some of the things that was the marrying of the two. Yeah. So I'll say first, most people believe that failure does not exist as part of success, right? And so um in all of the other industries, we have this saying, especially in tech, that you need to fail fast, right? And so we know that failure is going to come. It's just how quickly we can get through it and throw it back to the wall to check and see what else is going to come, right? And that's why you have so many tech companies that release like out beta and everything else, right? It's 80% there. um, I take some of that model into this, but recognizing I can't give customers an 80% experience, right? They have to have 100% every time they walk through the stadium, every time they see our team, anytime they experience anything related to our esports, our merch, whatever it is, they need to feel like they're getting top tier, white glove experience. And so I'll say that's the first thing of having to, you want to move fast. It's important to be first to market. You want to get through this, but also recognizing that you don't have the flexibility to be 80% there. I'll say the second thing is that there's always a ramp up. And I came in like game 6 or 7 into the season last year. So it was April of last year when I started. And it was also right before our MLS All-Star, and we were hosting All-Star in DC. So I'll let you guys figure out kind of all the logistics there. So you're, new league, new industry, fairly new city because I moved back after not living here for 18 years, and you're also hosting what ended up being the biggest and best and most successful MLS All-Star in the right here in the nation's capital. So I would say those were the first two, and then any other ramp up, right? So we all have typical ramp up with the new role, and new responsibilities. And I think when you're at this level, your ramp up has to be very, very short. And you also have to be very, very succinct about your vision, because everybody else has different visions and ways that they would love to see it. But you have to kind of be authentic to yourself and knowing your zone of genius and how you can get to success quickly and get your team to success quickly.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's not just brush over this big all-star game that you came into. Let's dig into that a bit deeper. So one thing we like to talk about, and we've spoken to people that are in the game ops side and really getting behind the scenes of like, what does a week look like? What does a day look like? What is everything that goes behind? Because as I said before we jumped on, as a fan, you come into the stadium and it's just all there, and you're there to watch the game. And then there's everything else that you just kind of expect to be there. But there's this hundreds and sometimes thousands at certain locations of teams behind all of this.
Yeah.
So both in terms of, as you said, you run the Audi field now, but also the All-Star game. So what exactly did the All-Star game look like in terms of logistics and operations? And then roll that into what does a typical home game look like?
Yeah, so I'll say with the All-Star, that is very unique because you have all of MLS behind you, in addition to all of those resources. And but it's a big lift because you really flip your entire stadium. So the entire stadium is branded to reflect the theme of the All-Star game. And so it was a process for, at least on the side prior to me getting here, this team logistically, our ops team was amazing, had been working on this 18 months prior with the league. The flipping of the stadium. So I don't know if you guys have attended, but we have the skills clinic that happens in the stadium. And then that's branded completely different and set up completely different, both on the pitch and also in all of the other areas than the All-Star game. And so then you have to come in and flip everything to reflect the All-Star game. So there were, it was long hours, long nights. Logistically, it's working with over 20 plus vendors. You have to work with our local police, as well as planograms of streets. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but our stadium is like right in the middle of DC at what we consider the wharf and Buzzard Point. So we have water on one side, and then we have, a number of other things, but we're kind of landlocked a little bit. So logistically getting people in and out of the stadium, having that surge of individuals who are just hanging around because maybe they didn't have a ticket, but they're in the space and in the vicinity, was probably the most challenging from a logistics standpoint. But our operations team was working around the clock. Everything that you guys see, it's times 10, right? And so even those that are aware, you may notice certain things, but even on a game day, they're here at, if we play at 7, they're in the stadium at 8 a.m. And there's a lot that happens before kickoff. So, or for gates open, I should say. From a game perspective, and when we talk about kind of just our regular matches, we have everything that goes on from a security and guest experience standpoint, but then the fan experience, right? And so we activate across all of our concourse for activities with for our youth, for our avid fans. We have our merch that we elevate and amplify. And then a big thing for us, and you didn't ask, but I'm going to plug this part, is that we've tried to enhance the culinary experience in stadium. So no longer thinking about, your typical hot dogs and hamburgers, right? So we wanted to lean into DC. And so what's authentic to DC? Well, crab cakes, seafood. We have everything from what we call smash burgers, and we have half smokes. So half smokes are really big here. So we partnered with about 6 other DC restaurants, locally known DC restaurants, to bring their concepts into the stadium. So it helps the local businesses. It also helps us elevate, because if you think about, you're coming to our stadium at 7 p.m., whether it's on a Wednesday night or a Saturday night, your expectation is that you're going to eat here, right? Because you're here at gates open at 6. You don't leave until 9:30. You want an experience. And so that's also what kind of pulls on our operations team, because we want people to understand that it's more than just a ticket. When you come to a DC United game, it's an experience.
Awesome. Yeah, the All-Star game is something that I've been lucky to attend when I was really, really little. And so kind of seeing how it's all put together and how huge of a production it is really cool. Especially since now it's way bigger than it was. And But as we kind of touched on before the call, you guys have Inter Miami coming to town this weekend. What does that do to your week to week, and how does that compare to an event like the All-Star game? Obviously, we've seen over the last year that just having Messi in the league has impacted attendance league wide, especially when he comes to town. So what is that kind of doing for you guys this week, and how does that also differ from another big event like the All-Star game?
Yeah. So I'll preface this by saying if you talk to any soccer enthusiasts, most of them believe that the real soccer happens outside of the US. And then we had the entree of Messi and a number of other individuals into the league, which the MLS did a really good job. And so that the team owners and kind of driving interest through individuals that are really well known outside of the MLS. So I don't need to, I know you guys have read some of that, but I don't need to tell you the economic impact that has on teams to be able to say that, in these games, you're going to sell out, right? And so logistically, if you think about it, you have, on a regular game, you have our typical fans, they come into the stadium, you flip the same things that you would normally do. On average, a team, let's say they're a 20,000 seat stadium, they may have about 14 to 15,000 regular attendees, right? And you kind of run in that 80%. When you play certain teams, specifically of Miami, that you're going to sell out, you're going to have more fans in the stadium, but you're also going to have more fans outside of the stadium, people who don't have tickets, who just want to be around the action. And so what it does is it brings about another 50% of individuals to your location. You asked about logistics. It is a well-oiled machine. I think, when we talk about just those games like an Inter Miami, it's actually led by the league, designates how some of the things that we do from a security standpoint, how we handle, the control of and the flow of different people in and out of the stadium, access to different zones and within our stadium. So it is quite different. We also get probably 40% more interest in press passes and a number of other things. So it's very hard to quantify from game to game. I can tell you, he's done amazing listen, you all can read, everybody can read about some of the deal, but he's been very influential for the league. And I have to also say that he's been very generous with his time, and when we engage, it's been positive for a lot of folks. So I'll say, just in general, this is part of the reason. Prior to Messi coming into the league was already having a resurgence, right? It's the fastest growing league out of all professional sports, and it's poised to eclipse the growth rate of the NBA and the NFL. But they helped us speed up that process. So, and not only Messi, obviously a number of teams have brought in other individuals. We have some on our team as well. It's really helped to continue to kind of grow the visibility, and then add the Apple deal, right? So those individuals who then have defined, hey, I'm interested in the MLS, who don't live in the US, now they'll be donning a DC United jersey, and they're not here within our geographic remit. So that right there has done wonders for us.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Was obviously all the teams in the league have a good part of their marketing strategy revolving around the players. How do you guys utilize your players as an asset for your marketing strategy? And then also, how does having a star player like Christian Benteke influence your marketing possibilities, not just in the United States, but globally as well?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first part of that question about how do we build around our players. We like to say that, soccer players almost suffer from what we call the helmet effect, that in NFL is that people don't know. So we could walk them down the middle of DC, for instance, and most people, maybe 1 in 10 would be able to recognize, and it may be kind of the 3 or 4 that you see and hear about all the time, right? But it is up to us, and part of our marketing strategy is to lean into their personal stories and make people more aware about them, make them more approachable to folks, but also to just want to be able to follow and cheer for them, even when even when the side of the coin doesn't necessarily tip in your favor at the end of the game. And so we do a lot of storytelling. We do a lot of interviews. We post them on. We do a lot of behind the scenes on social media. But we also work with a number of PR agencies in this area that have special events coming in. So, for instance, our players were part of a J. Crew men's event that happened about a week ago, right? And so, getting them into those spaces and allowing us to kind of continue to build on their interest as well helps us to kind of authentically tell their stories and build them out in the community. And then our community efforts are, I would like to say, top notch. And so we do a lot, from everything from House of Ruth, which is an organization here for women, to we partner with a number of businesses that are around this area, but we do a lot in the community. And so we bring our players in to the extent that they can make it into a lot of those areas, especially when it's an interest of theirs, right? So those are kind of the key things there. Now, when you talk about our players like a Benteke, and who are electric when they're on the field, and a lot of what they do goes viral even without us having to do much. You talk about the bicycle kick, that's one of those things that you can't buy that, right? And so our willingness to kind of take their image and likeness and help to amplify those things that they do well, and it's not hard when you have really great guys. Look, our guys are we had a fan fest recently, and all the guys came out, and the way that they were engaging with the fans, the positivity that flowed through them, and they were just enjoyable to be around for 3-4 straight hours. I mean, they had just gotten off a plane, played in Dallas, came right here, came to the fan fest, hadn't eaten, and they were just really amenable to our fans, taking pictures and just happy to be there. And so when you think about when you have those types of individuals and players to be able to work around, that makes it a lot easier to be able to kind of build out their brand and build on them, because you're building on something that's authentic and not having to kind of make that up.
Yeah, a lot of players do have, specifically in the MLS, do have that helmet effect, like you were talking about, and utilizing them and growing not just your own brand through them, but their brand as well. Obviously, increases the visibility of the entire club, and having them interact with the community is always usually a good thing, because they know what they're doing when they're interacting with people who might potentially come to a game. What type of marketing opportunities do you see now as opposed to during the off season? Are there maybe bigger brand collaborations, longer sponsorships, or higher engagement with the community that you see? Obviously, the difference between the in season and off season is pretty big, but just year by year, I know you've only been there for about 2 years, but from one to the next, what kind of growth have you seen so far in those opportunities?
Last year was still a year away from coming out of COVID too. So I think, everybody, all of the different clubs were trying to get their feet under them, and then thinking about kind of the opportunities that laid ahead. We've had a almost 40% increase from where we were this time last year, just in season ticket interest, et cetera. So huge opportunity for us there. We just signed a new front of shirt partner, which is Guidehouse. And so if you think about what that does from just a DC area and kind of awareness there. And then we just signed a sleeve partner, which is Fruitist out of the Bay Area. And so introducing real fruit to individuals on our side, and just being able to kind of communicate how all of this works together with our club, but then also with our partners. What's been interesting now, and so for us, is making sure that people understand that you really can unlock the power of your brand through sports. And I think for so long, individuals just wrote a check, right? Like, I just want to be on on a banner outside of the racetrack, or I just want to, be here. And now we're saying, look, there's a real opportunity if you share your goals and who your target audience is, that we can ensure that we're going to activate on site and also report to you on how we're able to activate with this audience. And so there's a true partnership with us and our partners of being able to go through that through all of the partnerships, no matter what level they are. So with that, we're redefining for folks what sports partnerships looks like. And I think the growth of MLS, and you said it, David, as you were asking the question, the growth of the MLS has helped with that, right? Because that not only will, you have an opportunity here within a stadium, but when we do something like we're getting ready to do an event with Dick's Sporting Goods and MLS, well, now it's amplifying not only our brand through the channels that we have, but then it's also through other partners, right? So partners are jumping on board to be able to also activate with that as well. And so I think the biggest thing that you see out of MLS, and specifically I'll speak for DC United, is the integrated marketing approach, that it's not just, you sign the deal and you're right here and we've put you on some banners and our LED screens, but we're actually saying, how do we integrate you into all these different elements? And what I didn't share is that also under us we have esports. So I look at how we're amplifying through our esports. I also oversee our merch and apparel, and then also, like you talk about, when we bring a partner in, we look at our community efforts and how do we intertwine them through those to the extent that they want to be involved.
Yeah. So I think you answered a lot of what I was thinking in my head there. But when it comes to deciding who to bring on as a sponsor, because I would imagine there's always a couple of companies that would like to be on the front of a jersey of an MLS club. So I'd assume there's a bit of picking and choosing that goes on. So what exactly is it that goes into the decision-making process of deciding who to go with as a sponsor?
Yeah. There's three things, right? Number one, and marketers, we always talk in three, so no surprise there. But, the first thing is really about the brand itself, and do they really see and want to be associated with a sports team? Like, because that type of partnership is very different. And so the desire has to be there, and the understanding that this is a marathon, not a sprint, that we are continuing to build as we go through the 2 or the 3 to 5 year partnership. But number two, there has to be an authentic kind of synergy between the two. Do their core mission and values align with ours? And how do we see ourselves really building together, right? Not separately, but really building together in the community to help each to achieve their goals. For someone who does the front of shirt, the first and foremost is really about awareness, right? And so, but awareness where and who are they resonating with? How are they really kind of increasing their brand affinity through those impressions? And then down the road, do we help with conversions, consideration, and all of those other things, right? So we explain to them those different elements, and also to ensure that we're on the same page about what that looks like. And then the last piece is their goals, right? And so I kind of alluded to that in the second part, but we want to ensure that we're able to help you achieve your goals. And on the flip side, we want to ensure that we're both in this for the long term, because that's very important to us, right? So those are kind of the three. It's easier when you're talking about a local team because you're looking for someone who wants a local footprint. And we know that better than anybody else because we're here. But what we're finding is a lot of our sponsors are coming in and saying, yes, I want to increase my local footprint, but I'm really looking for that national, international. And that's something that we can provide that we haven't been able to before, specifically around the Apple deal.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'm glad you brought up the Apple deal, because I was going to go right back to it. Obviously that has opened up a whole new door, really, in terms of being able to attract players. Because before it was just, the base salary and bonuses and everything that comes really from the club. And obviously with the Messi one, there's all of the rumors of the size of the dollars that Saudi Arabia were offering, and that they've been able to attract all of these other players just through these contracts. But how do you see the Apple deal really making a long-term impact on being able to bring in these star players now that there is this, I'm not sure how much of a competition the MLS is seeing with the Saudi League in terms of getting these players who are looking for a completely different move. But how does the Apple deal as a marketer, because obviously this is right in your world of thinking of these deals, what do you think the future looks like in terms of being able to go beyond just contracts with clubs?
Yeah, there's three things from the Apple deal. So I'll say it from the player's perspective. You're actually someone who has a presence within your geographic region. And then once I put you on Apple Plus, now I've extended your reach and your ability to be able to grow your fandom, right? And so from that perspective, even as you leave your current location, all of those individuals now still have the opportunity to be able to watch you, which is something that, if you think about, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, our broadcasts were very locally centric, right? So that opens up, the interest and the ability for someone who is very keen on being able to kind of keep that connection with their community. But the second piece is, and that's the part that a lot of people don't think about, is that, when you think about kind of making this transition, where's the opportunity? And so I think the opportunity has continued to grow because a lot of those players can still play with their home teams. And so you really get the best of both worlds, right? And I don't want to get too much into contracts and so forth, because I honestly don't know all about them. But I will say that that's one of the things that's really compelling. So that's from the player side, right? But here's the other piece from a marketer's perspective. And so this is someone coming out of digital, right? My ability to be able to market and to target individuals on digital platforms as opposed to broadcast is quite significant, because when you're sitting in your home and you're watching something on a traditional broadcast, you could walk out the room, someone else could walk in the room. I really don't know who's watching, right? But when you think of something like a Apple Plus, typically we have a large percentage that are actually accessing it through their mobile phone. We also have, you have the sensor where the TV will ask you, okay, you're no longer watching. Are you still interested in this program? But then you also can add complimentary ads to the side. So sponsors can actually advertise during the broadcast, but you can be sitting in your living room and something comes up. You can scan the QR code while you're there, and immediately I've driven you to an online experience. So the omni-channel opportunity for advertisers and for the teams significantly increases because you're able to follow this person and really tell a story about all of these different consumers, more than you would be able to if it was just traditional broadcast. Now, traditional broadcast, no one kill me, is still a great medium, and it's one that always needs to be part of kind of your marketing mix. But for us, having the Apple deal creates significant amount of reach, impressions, awareness, but also revenue, because those customers will continue to kind of bounce back to different things. And now we're able to kind of just figure out what they love best and deliver that to them even off platform.
Wow. Yeah. And then the viewing experience as someone at home or on their mobile, wherever it might be, is definitely completely different, to your point of when you go from just cable broadcast to now everything's happening with things like Apple Plus. I think there's this whole other world that's going to come in the next, decade or two, or however long it might take, it might be sooner, of how VR and augmented reality will change the viewing experience from home. And obviously Apple Vision Pro is obviously a big part of, what everyone is seeing that might look like. And obviously with that having the MLS package in it, what are some, I guess, predictions that you have of how that viewing experience from home might change over the next, 5, 10, 15 years as all of this technology can completely reshape what it's like to sit on your sofa at home and watch a game?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about sitting on your sofa at home, you get the best of both worlds because you're able to 100% control your experience. So I think that you'll have a number of fans that will choose that, but then there's fans who really like the live experience, right? So I'm going to take the two out and say for those that want to stay home, having an immersive experience right there where you can control, you can take it off, you can put it on, you can start it, you can stop it. I think that is the direction from a growth perspective. I don't think that that will replace, right? So the live experience. I do think that AR and VR, and look, we're even moving those experiences inside of our stadium as well. So you'll see a lot of folks that are looking to bring more technology into the stadium to drive fans to experience that in stadium and feel like they can control it in stadium versus having to just be at home. But for those, for whatever reason, let's say, Matt, you're in the Bay, but you want to support DC United. We all know that that's secretly you're a DC United fan. That you can do that. And our ability to be able to deliver that will be through, to your point, being able to offer you different experiences as if you're in the stadium and not watching it from home. And so I think that's where the opportunity is to bring that fan experience from the live piece into the home, especially for those people who aren't geographically located near their team of choice.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It'll be exciting, I think any of the kind of prototype or videos that you've seen on YouTube or that Apple have released of what primarily the NBA, I think is the one that they show, but it's just a whole new world of multicast and stats and the 3D models that it looks like they're going to put in, and obviously all of the new things with being able to integrate like cartoons are now like the players on the pitch and being able to make a kid's favorite characters. Christian Benteke up front might be the future. But on that note of kind of everything that's changing and it's new and revenue wise, there's obviously the big ones that everyone knows about in terms of tickets, merchandise, broadcast deals, the Apple deal, things like that. But what are some of the lesser known revenue drivers for a soccer club, or even if it's other sports that you're just aware of that the average person just might not ever think about, that you can make money through doing that, or you can make that much money doing that, so can you share some insight on some of those lesser known ones?
Yeah. So first, I think we touched on it before, the merch and apparel. I don't think people realize the interest in just even a kit, not even talking about all of the other merchandising opportunities that we have down the road. Obviously, scarves are a big thing in soccer, but then there's a lot of other things that we heard from individuals as it related to sizing for women and a number of different other things. We think about the European cut versus, what we needed here in the US. And so we actually are entering into 4 different partnerships this year where we're rolling out custom collabs that are going to kind of flip how people think about soccer wear, athleisure apparel, et cetera. And the first of those is with a streetwear brand based here in DC. And so you'll see a lot of clubs that are and teams that are expanding what they think about when they talk about kind of merch and apparel and the opportunities for folks to buy that. The second, we'll talk about esports, which I alluded to before. So at least in the MLS, we all have FIFA integration. We all have our designated players who play on our behalf. And so there's a real opportunity there through Twitch streams and a number of others where you host tournaments, et cetera, where we're able to kind of amplify and increase our revenue streams. But the one that people don't think about is that typically a team is actually playing at a stadium that they own, right? And so how do they utilize that space when it's not in use? And so being able to bring non-traditional sports into a soccer stadium. So we actually host and in some instances own football bowl games. We've also done rugby out of our stadium, and as well as concerts, festivals, you name it, right? And so being able to make that switch when you're in between our games is really huge. And listen, you all know our season. Someone made a joke and said, we shouldn't say when our season is. We should say when it's not, the 2 months that it's not, because the season is so long. So we also deal with a very long season. So having to kind of figure out in between where to kind of make that different just additional revenue stream is interesting. I'll say the last piece, which we didn't talk about, is F&B. And once you get someone in stadium, there's really an opportunity. We just introduced Dippin' Dots and a number of other things. So we want to take them from their initial cocktail. We love when they come to the stadium 2 hours before, and they're outside, they come in, and so the average fan is here at least 3.5 hours. And so that's a significant opportunity to be able to provide them an experience, especially a culinary experience, that drives them to want to come back.
Awesome. Yeah. One of the things, obviously, that you mentioned a lot is partnerships, specifically with other sports in your own stadium. And also, we've talked about throughout the podcast the growth of the sport. We know that you guys share the stadium, obviously, for other revenue reasons, but with the Washington Spirit. And also, the game has been growing, not just the men's game, but the women's game as well. How do you guys collaborate with the Washington Spirit to capture all that growing interest among kids and adults and turn them into fans of both teams, not just one or the other?
Yeah, so we're continuously working on our partnership between the two teams to kind of we actually have our women's night that's coming up at the end of the month, and having the Washington Spirit partner with us on that. It's one of those things. If you look about women's sports in general, if you look at women's basketball right now and just them being able to fill stadiums, whereas just a year and a half ago that was not the case. That the names of these players, like for Washington Spirit, Trinity Rodman and Connie, like people know the names and are very familiar. Michelle Kang, which is the owner, like you know those names. I think that's one of the biggest things from a growth perspective. And so we look for opportunities where maybe we have a double header where we can do something and kind of push each other's games and kind of opportunity through our platforms, and drive people to come out the next day to be able to enjoy that. It's continuing to grow, I'll say that, and to figure out, because of the season length, of how we can get the players to do appearances together and so forth. And that's one of the challenges, because they're playing when we're not, because obviously we're sharing the stadium. So those are the things that we work around. But really our main goal is to make sure that they're as successful as possible. And so helping them by any way we can, but also, utilizing kind of some of our influence in our areas to be able to highlight what the Spirit have going on. But they've done an amazing job. They don't need us, but we love the partnership, because they're doing some amazing things over there.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, you guys are not just dealing with just the Washington Spirit, but you're in one of the major cities in the country that has a team from every major sports league. What does that kind of, I guess, competition / collaboration look like to make sure that everyone's getting a piece of the pie of attendance and attention?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we were in an area where football had kind of taken a little bit of a dive. And so, and I'll say dive just from fan experience, not anything to do with or fan interest, not anything to do with the fan experience. And so what we saw last year was that a lot more of our DC residents were very interested in the XFL versus our NFL team, which we have the Washington Commanders, but we also have the Baltimore Ravens. It's not that far. So you have people who are split. This year, as you can imagine, there were huge announcements that came out leading into the season, and there was a resurge of sorts, both on their end, but also on the Wizards. And, the Nats always do a great job. Like, we're a block and a half away from the Nats stadium. So I don't know if you guys know that, but if I come out of one part of our stadium and look out the window, I can see their stadium. So we're very close. Ironically, though, what has happened is that you have fans who enjoy both. And so even when you talk about the proximity we are to the Nat Stadium, we work with our other teams to help uplift and amplify. So on our home opener, quite a few of the Washington Capitals, which is our NHL team, the MLB, the Nats, posted about our home opener. Also, because we're close, it's not uncommon if we have a game around the same time to see people walk into our stadium with a Nats jersey on, or see people walk into the Nats stadium with a DC United kit on. So I think it's a healthy competition. I think there's there's enough to go around. Like, we're the only MLS team. If you think about it, there's not one in Virginia. So we're located in DC. There's not one in Virginia, not one in Maryland, not one in Delaware, right? So there's quite a bit of remit that we have, that there's still a lot of people that we haven't touched. And so it's a great, healthy competition, but we always extend, all of us always extend when asked. We've never had a team not be willing to help us amplify something, and vice versa.
Awesome. It's always kind of great to see that happening, and the collaboration is always really cool, especially when the players get involved. And like, for example, I know Trinity Rodman threw out the first pitch, I think at a Nats game last year. Things like that. Those things are always really cool to see. The other major thing going on in DC, obviously, are the noisy neighbors over in politics. Is the team able to take advantage of the attention that brings, or does it impact the marketing operations or anything in a negative way?
No, it actually doesn't. Because, and we all talk about this where, there's a unifying kind of perspective when it comes to sports. And so we welcome everyone in the stadium, and we have had everyone. I mean, the only thing that is a roadblock is the Secret Service. And once we add that to the equation of already kind of challenging traffic patterns, that gets to be a bit much. But we actually see a surge of people coming because they're visiting the area. And we kind of deem this as the place that you want to visit on 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. So when you finish everything else that you're doing, we also host Congressional Football. That's one of the things that I did not say, that they actually play in our stadium as well.
Well, we know we're almost up time-wise, so we just have a few kind of quicker fire questions just to finish it off. So the first one, kind of going into what David just mentioned, and we talked about all the different clubs and teams and sports that are in the area. Aside from anything going on in Audi Field, what is your favorite stadium or arena to go to for a game?
Ooh, you put me on the spot.
Without burning any bridges.
Without my favorite, can I pick two? No.
You absolutely can.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna, besides ours, because you didn't give me that option, I'm actually gonna pick. So I'll pick Capital One, where the Wizards play. Just because they've been very gracious and, in extending that opportunity. But they also have a number of different aspects that make the experience really enjoyable. And they've brought in a lot of new things into the stadium, just at the different levels of experience, and also their partnership with Capital One. So you have a completely different entrance that always helps when you talk about bustling area. I'd say number two is actually Nats. And that would be surprising to you, only because the view that you have from different parts of the stadium while you're watching the game. And then they actually have a really great premium experience too.
Nice. And then next one, and this can be DC United or not, but what is the favorite moment, or I guess proudest moment as well, because you've had such an illustrious career so far of launching big things? What's been the favorite or most proudest moment of your career so far?
So I'm going to give you two, because I think about my career in two different stages. But I'll say the first is actually making the transition to tech. So I always tell this story. I was a marketer coming in, and I could not get my laptop off the docking station for the first couple of hours. I was like, where is this button, right? And so to think about going from there to being able to launch stuff like Xbox and Facebook, I think that to me, that is something that, a lot of people can't say, right? And so that's the proudest, I'll say, from that standpoint. this point where I am right now, for us to be looking at a significant increase in our ticket sales, significant increase in our season ticket members, and then to have just a resurge of awareness. Like you can walk around now and you ask people about DC United and they know what we're to know the team that you're talking about. And so I'd say where we're standing right now and the growth that we're seeing from a team perspective and interest and fandom, right now it's the proudest of this, Lisa 2.0, and from a career perspective. And I think it'll continue to grow from that standpoint.
Love it. And then the final one, and again, this can be career related, this can be personal related, but what is the one thing you're most looking forward to in the rest of 2024?
Ooh, I'm looking forward to us making playoffs. If I can foreshadow 3 games or 4 games into the season, I'm really excited to see that. I'm also really excited to see what we do from an MLS All-Star perspective this summer, because I think, every time, you build on something and it continues to get better and better. So I'm really looking forward to attending that. And then, the number one thing is about the game on Saturday. So I actually moved here from Miami. So I was living in Miami 6 years prior to this. And so we haven't experienced what this is like, and having that many just core fans in the building. And so I'm really looking forward to the energy and everything and the experience and all of that, and us being able to really uplift that and see our team shine. So
Love it. Love it. Well, that is everything that we have. And we know we're taking up extra minutes of your busy day. So again, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome to hear about your journey, all of the insights from your time so far.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for watching this episode of Off the Pitch. Don't forget to drop a follow or subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening from. That helps us bring stories like these to your ears each and every week. And if you have a minute, leave a review as well, as that helps us grow the Off the Pitch community and bring even more exciting guests on. See you in the next one.